Welcome to Rain City Supercars. I'm Dan.
And I'm Nick.
And we're recording live at Drivers Club, brought to you by Avants, Haggerty, Carter Subaru, Rainier Beer.
Which, by the way, I see we got Rain City Supercars got a shout-out from Rainier Beer on their Instagram yesterday.
That was kind of cool.
Yes, it was. Nice job.
I may have had a few too many on the dock, but thanks for Rainier.
You can never have too many on the dock. You were still floating. It's fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was.
I would have thought you were drinking today as you were jumping up and down on the child's trampoline next door, so that was interesting.
I may have raided my neighbor's floating trampoline, which he said I could.
Oh,
and slip and slide.
Watching it was fun to watch. Cool. Yeah.
That went like you guys think it did, by the way. I am 40, which most of our listeners know, and me attempting a floating slip and slide went about as well as you would think.
Well, you attempted the trampoline first, so
yeah.
that was the important thing.
Not sexy
Shauna
at all.
goes, "Are you going to go out there?" And I went, "Nope." No reason to be two 40-year-old idiots out there jumping around.
Yeah, I jumped off the trampoline onto the slip and slide and promptly just face planted.
Yeah.
It's very graceful.
You handled it well. You handled it very well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, 93 degrees today, so it was a good day to be on the lake.
Somebody, a friend of ours texted me. He's like, you out in the Triumph today? And I'm like, no.
It's like I was going to say, driving a convertible I was driving here with my windows down for about a minute. Mm-hmm. It was just like a slow, hot hair dryer coming into the car. It was awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank God for cooled seats.
I've never driven the Triumph in over like 83 degree weather because it's miserable.
Yeah.
Because even with the roof up, it's miserable. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was definitely enjoying having the Porsche back. And
is it fixed?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I've tested it extensively, and no fault of theirs. Like it was just a weird issue. That car has two map sensors, one before and one after. They replaced the one before because that's what the code said to do. I mean, they have a guide. They did that, and then intermittently the second one failed. And so it's the same code, but there's only, take or pick your map sensor. So,
sure.
But it seems to be good now. I've put probably like 200 miles on it in the last week, extensively, all different conditions, different heats, everything. Yeah, and not really, just, it seemed to do it at random before, but now it seems good. So I'm so glad to have that back for the next 4 days till we leave.
Yeah, I just got the Maserati back, and I want a huge shout out to Queen City Auto Rebuild and then Metropolitan Detail. John and everybody at Metropolitan took that car in and re-clear brought it for me, and it's gorgeous.
It looks better than new.
It really does.
It looks better than new.
I stopped by and saw John today before I came over here, and I was like, he's like, "What'd you need?" I'm like, "It just looks great." I'm like, "I just need to tell you thank you again." And they use, is it how does it say
Steck?
Aztec.
Aztec. Aztec Dyno Shield.
He said it to me, and I wrote it down, and I still forgot it. But it just looks incredible. I guess we got a little owie in a QFC parking lot, and initially when we had bought that car, we cheaped out and did not good film. So paid the price, unfortunately, but it looks incredible now. And I got the Maserati back, and unfortunately the Subaru is in. I got a problem. I got an acceleration problem. So our good friends and sponsors at Carter are taking care of me. They're trying to figure out what's wrong with it, or if it's just something wrong with me. So it's only got 10,000 miles on it, and I've been driving a clutch since I'm 14. I really hope I didn't fry a clutch. I don't know how I could, but literally in that car, if you come out of first gear and in second gear and it drops below down 2,000 RPMs, between 2,000 and 3,000 RPMs, it feels like the motor's going. It's like it's cutting off. Like I don't know what's going on. So it's probably a clutch. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. So
well, I mean, how many inches over stock are you on the tires?
Okay, but I've done everything. I've done everything correct. I've aligned it correct. All the lift. I didn't go above what Subaru. Well, Subaru suggests you don't do anything to it, but and so.
So we could put that into its own tip of the week. Like, hey, one of the things that you do after you add a ton of tire to a car is you put a lot more strain on the drivetrain. Even trucks.
Yeah,
that's everything across the board. Lifting is a.
But it's funny because at 3,000 RPMs, the car just kind of takes off. So who knows?
Huh.
We'll see. I haven't heard from them today, and I was supposed to. So, but I've been so busy I didn't call them. So yeah, we'll see.
Carter Subaru tip of the week.
Good lead in.
Yeah. Thanks, Carter Subaru.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with Subarus. It does. It has something to do with every car. I wanted to do something really simple but really useful that everybody should kind of know because, one, I've dealt with 2 windshields in the Porsche in 6 months and rock chips in every vehicle I've had. I pepper my windshields. Usually when I replace my windshields, it's actually not because of a huge crack. It's because of the road trips. And if you're driving multi-state, And the front of my car, of course, has paint protection, but the windshields get just trashed. They get sandblasted, literally.
They have that now, though, like paint protection.
You can get, and so that's one of the things I was going to talk about. So to avoid all this to begin with, if you have a very expensive windshield, we have talked about this before, but it's not the Carter Subaru tip of the week, but they do offer clear protection film for windshields. Typically, it doesn't last for more than a year, and if you drive year-round in really harsh conditions, maybe even 6 months. But if you have, like, say, any Lamborghini ever, and your windshield is $10,000 to $20,000 literally for a Murcielago. I think it's $20,000.
It's like that too for like an S class, the Mercedes S class. Like all the technology.
Yeah, stuff like that. This is largely worth it because it's like usually it ranges depending on who the installer is and how well it's done. I've seen it as low as 100 and up to like 300 to 400, maybe even 500 in some of the really rare stuff where they have to make it really, really clear. But in the cost of a windshield at $20,000.
Whoa! Don't you have to make it really, really clear no matter what?
No,
like,
but I mean,
it's
like
a windshield.
I know, but I mean, like the edging and how well it's wrapped in there and stuff like that.
I gotcha.
But I mean, it is worth it depending on the vehicle you have. Like example, the Land Cruiser windshield's like $200 to replace, so probably not bother. Just go to Safelight, get it replaced every 6 months. But like I said, if you got an exotic and or F40 or something where it's just like this is impossible, like absolutely worth it. I'm pretty sure our friends at Metropolitan do it actually.
Yeah.
That said, I want to talk about the chips. So you can't fix a sandblasted windshield. I've asked everywhere, and you can get chips filled, but when a windshield is sandblasted, it's done. But if you are going to repair a chip, the process is actually pretty simple. So if you've seen it done, it kind of makes sense. They put it's like 3 suction cups, and then they drill out the center of it. And what they do is your windshield is in laminate layers. You have an outside layer and an inside layer, and there's like a laminate film in the middle of it. That's what makes it shatterproof. So that if you get a massive rock to your windshield, it's going to shatter the windshield, but it's not going to break through into the cab and hit you in the face. It's safety glass. And what this does is they drill it out, and they remove the air and the moisture from inside that laminate area, and then they fill it with a resin, and they use a UV light to harden that resin and then polish it.
Because they suck the air out, and then when they put the resin in,
it fills all those little micro.
Sucks the resin into it. Okay.
Yeah, it sucks the resin into it. So it's really, really light. That stuff. I had a chance to look at some. It's not thick like gel like you think. It's actually look more like water almost. That's how it gets into all those little tiny places. It's really, really thin, and then they UV it and rock hard. And yes, it's as good as new. You're going to have a tiny, tiny little speck, like a little sand speck of where they did that if they do it right. And it really depends on the technician. Let's be real clear.
You're saying I shouldn't go to the guy in the small tent in the mall parking lot?
Maybe if he's done 1,000 of them that day, he might be the best guy out there.
We've all seen that.
Yeah, exactly, Yeah. And so usually your insurance covers them for free if you have a good policy. I have seen some rather predatory policies, and I'm going to call this out that everybody should know about, where this can count as a comp claim. When it's like $30 to $50 to do it out of pocket, but if you run it through your insurance, most insurance companies, any insurance company worth its salt, usually has a pass for that. They're like, hey, it's way cheaper than us replacing your windshield, so yeah, we're going to cover it for you. Or they'll be like, $10 out of pocket or $50 or something, depending on the car. But be sure of that. Check your policy. You can get charged for a comp claim for a windshield rock chip fill, and you can watch your rates skyrocket because of that. That's what I wanted to bring up. I have seen that, and I think it's absolutely predatory. But that's how it works. It's just it's a really simple process. Yes, it's as safe as original, and you can do it. Here's the one check though. If you leave a chip unchecked, like you get a crack and you don't fill it, 90% of them will spread.
Well, because especially in the heat and the cold, correct?
Yep, and the heat, and that's what I was going to say next. The heat and the cold is what agitates that. You don't see it. You can't see it. Because it's so little, but your windshield expands and contracts in heat and cold.
Oh, I learned that the hard way on the BMW. I got a chip on the BMW, and I took it home on a really hot day, and
the next morning?
No, my parents had a wonderful garage that had hot and cold in it, and it was really cold, and I sprayed the windshield down with cold water, and gone. Like,
yeah.
Like I had to have the guy come to the house to replace the windshield because I could not drive the car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My stupid fault, but yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to close with that. If you do get a chip, you should, above all else, try and go to a glass place. Find somebody who's got a good rating, look at the reviews online, and get to them the same day, as soon as humanly possible. Chances are, if you got it the night before, and it's a day like it's 93 degrees now, and it drops to like 70 at night, you're not going to survive to the next day. It's too much of a hot and cold flux.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah,
that's your Carter Subaru tip of the day. Take care of your windshield.
Yeah.
So, should we introduce our guest?
Sure. Go for it.
Hans Wurl, welcome to the show. Hans
Just
is
making
with,
you do it because you know I'd screw up his last name.
It's a tough
Give
one.
it a whirl.
Yeah, give it a. Oh, there it is.
Give it a
I'm sure
whirl.
he's never heard that before, Dan.
He told me that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, single syllable words.
Exactly. Yeah. It makes it easier.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I mean, you're a local guy here. I mean, well, you've been local for a while now that you said you're working out of your house, but you're usually a little bit more mobile when it's not a pandemic time, correct?
Yeah, pandemic time has me very, very local. As most people, I don't really have a lot of desire to go to the airport these days. But no, I'm born and raised in this area, and apart from a couple years when I was in high school living in Canada, I've been here the whole time. Work from home professionally, for the last 6 years for Gooding and Company, and but yeah, been a little stuck at home a little too much recently, as I know everyone has.
Yeah.
Gooding is one of my favorite auctions to go down to.
So you guys have been there.
Oh,
You've
yes.
experienced all this.
Oh,
This is
yes.
great. Good.
I mean, because Dan and I do a ton
fancy
of work for
auctions.
Concorso Italiano, and so we're always down there. But it's a different vibe. It always is. I mean, and they all have their own thing. Like
Yep.
the Meekum is wild and crazy. Barrett Jackson is like Meekum on crack, and Gooding is just kind of calm. And I mean, it's sophisticated and it's a good time. So
Yeah.
And I mean, in fact. Some of the older catalogs are sitting in front of us here, and I was going through them, but it looks like a coffee table book. Like it's something that
Yeah, well, we pride ourselves on having a high quality experience, both with the books and being a client or being a spectator. The entire time, Gooding and Company's looking out for, making sure everyone's enjoying themselves,
Sure.
and it should be. I mean, no matter what, we're obviously in the business of selling cars at auction, but it better be fun.
Yeah.
It better be fun, or no one's going to want to do it, right?
So, I mean, were you always the car kid?
Always a car kid.
Yeah.
Always from day one. When I was 2 years old, my nickname was Motor because
Okay.
all I made was engine sounds, literally.
Okay.
And so
We had to learn to talk every different way. It's fine.
Yeah,
Good
no,
for you.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and my knowledge hasn't really moved much past that now. But yeah, always a car guy. Had a couple of influences in my life as a kid. Friends of my dad's, an uncle who was a car guy. Like most people who really got into it. I didn't have fancy cars at home. My dad wasn't a big car guy, although he always appreciated it. But there were other influences that steered me that way. And so, I mean, to my detriment, my entire adolescence was basically car biased. Whether people liked it or not.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No. Well, unless you're trying to do things like, graduate from high school with good grades and, stay out of trouble for not driving too fast, all those types of things. But no,
I've never had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know what you're talking about. Can't relate.
Yeah.
it was pretty singular focus, There's a lot of us out there.
Yeah, 8 million Hot Wheels. How many speeding tickets?
All of it.
I mean,
Nick hasn't changed a lot since high school.
yeah, I was gonna say,
I was
Neither
like,
have I.
is that then or now?
I was gonna say, I haven't been pulled over in a long time.
Either have
Yeah.
I.
It's weird that I mean obviously I'm more and more cautious, and but and there has been, I feel like we talked about this a little bit. There's been a lot of people that have been taking advantage of this COVID and they've been out on the roads I mean, cars passing me like Ford Tauruses, and I'm like, dude, you're doing 100. Like,
Yeah.
come on, like, stop.
Yeah, I was having a spirited drive up 90, and I was not the fastest car on the highway. And I'm like, okay, this is nuts.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a free for all. The first 2-3 weeks were pretty good for getting out, weren't
Oh,
they?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
social distancing. We were
I
social
was
distancing.
being very
Yeah.
careful to
Yeah.
be all by myself. But
Yeah.
you could kind of, I mean, I always head south from where I live and end up in like Hobart and all those types of areas. And you could kind of do whatever you wanted, it seemed, out there. At least I felt like
Lawless.
It was a little bit lawless. There was just no one out there. It was incredible.
Yeah, you weren't bothering anybody. There's nobody to hit. It was great.
I don't know that we'll have
Kinda
that
miss it.
experience again. I don't know
either.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we had never had that before, and I don't know that we'll have it again. Hopefully, we don't have it.
Nobody's going to, I wish we'd have another pandemic so I could speed.
Oh, gosh.
So,
Obviously,
it
trade.
doesn't roll off the tongue like you want it to.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Trade it all.
I love your official title. It was very confusing. You are a specialist.
Yeah.
That's it. You're a specialist.
Yeah, I'm a specialist. So I'm part of a team at Gooding & Company. Gooding & Company is, roughly 20 people, and we put on auctions. And so we sell cars for clients at auctions, and that takes all kinds of people. And I'm part of a team that deals with the cars and the clients. So we're specialists. And I guess it can have all kinds of connotations. But, we've been pretty lucky to have a really great core group of guys that are really, really knowledgeable, and the description fits depending on, I guess, on what we're doing that day.
So your team, are you guys going out and finding the cars for the auction and preparing them and preparing all of that kind of?
Yeah, cars come to us in all different fashions. They can come just on a recommendation. They can come through a relationship that you've been nurturing for 25 years. They can come from your father's best friend. But in a general sense, yeah, our job is to handle the consignments of the cars coming into auctions, and then handle the client relationships in general, worldwide. We obviously have a really, varied and big client list. And so the job of handling the client load and the interactions with the clients falls to the specialists, and it's fantastic.
And I understand that, like Dan and I have done some of that stuff and helped with Concorso, but it's a little bit. I've said it. It's like hand holding, in the fact that, like, you don't just go up and go, "You want to sell your car? Okay, great. Sign this form. Thank you. Have a nice day." As we know, as car guys, we're attached to our cars.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that if you're going to sell a car, if you're going to let it out of the stable, that it's being treated right. It's going to be sold to the right person. You're going to want to know the person it goes to. I mean, I still talk to the guy I sold my BMW to. I don't know if he really wants to talk to me, but
Hi.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm still
How's
here.
it doing? Can I have a photo? Is it sleeping? So. But I have seen that in the fact that it's, I don't want to say high maintenance, because they're really people in the car world, especially that are selling at high end auctions like Gooding. They want high end. They want the white glove treatment.
Yeah, white glove treatment's a good way to put it.
You're looking at me like I'm crazy, but I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you want the white glove treatment.
Well,
for sure,
I do. I just don't have anything to sell the white glove. Yeah. So yeah.
No, it's true, and people in the car world are a cross section of society like anything else, and so we deal with people of all walks of life with all kinds of experience and with all kinds of expectations, and everything from an estate scenario where someone has passed on and someone who knows nothing about collector cars now owns 8 of them and needs some help, and then to obviously the most astute and experienced collectors in the world, most of whom are a client of ours. So yeah, the expectations of people are different, the experience is different, and it's actually kind of my favorite part. It's the variance of the job, and to be able to kind of talk to those people and we want to just serve everybody's needs, really. When it comes to selling a car, when you're dealing with the seller, it's meeting their needs. Obviously, the white glove treatment is just the way we operate, and everything above board, and we're real straight shooters. But we really, really want to meet the needs, and they vary from client to client. And so that's a nice challenge. It's a great challenge.
I want to know a little bit more on how you got from being a kid here in the Pacific Northwest to doing stuff like that. But we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to get into that.
We spend an average of 8 hours and 41 minutes a day facing screens. Laptops, smartphones, tablets, even digital refrigerators. But what are we really connected to? Isn't it time you connected to something greater? Sometimes the best way to connect is to disconnect. This moment of escape was created by Hagerty for people who love cars.
And we're back, and we left off. We were talking, how you came to be. You're from here. You said you moved to Canada for a couple of years?
Yeah, we don't have to talk about Canada. It was a couple of years in high school. It was
like another
blame
like
Canada.
I don't even know why. I don't know. I guess I'm an accuracy freak or something. I had to throw that in there. I haven't been here the whole time. But
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say that. Like, yeah, I went to Canada for college or for high school. Like, what?
Well, it makes me sound interesting, maybe.
It does.
Yeah,
That's my point.
I like Canada.
I'm a big fan of Canada, but it's like you don't hear that. You hear people like, oh, I grew up in Canada. I came down here for high school. Like, oh, that makes sense. So yeah, exactly.
No,
the mountains?
Yeah.
No, I grew up in Renton, went to Hazen High School, just a local guy. My first car was a Baja Bug.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
That's a
Yeah,
cool
that's
first
wrong
car.
there.
Yeah, it was a cool first car. Parents gave me $1,500, and that was like the most intriguing thing I could find, and I guess Auto Trader at that point.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was an Auto Trader, the little
Old
print
school,
mag.
yeah.
Oh, God, I miss it so much. Yeah, saw the Baja Bug, and then had to buy a Nova SS, and had to switch it up. And
You've had cool cars.
yeah, I've gone through cars. I've had cool cars. I guess I shouldn't say that. When I do what I do for a living, I'm always like, oh, I really wish I could have that cool car, which I haven't had. But no, I've always tried to have enthusiast cars, and I've always been, as soon as I could drive, I was always really about driving. And for me, that's always been a big thing, cars. And I've gone and had a lot of exposure to car shows and concours and all this throughout throughout my professional life doing cars. But for me, when you ask what I want to go do with cars, it's always go for a drive or ride a motorcycle or something like that. It's just getting out and doing that.
That's him to a T.
Yeah, so I get immediately bored with cars that are cool on paper, and you go drive them, and you're like, this is stupid. Like I gotta have function. It's gotta function for me.
Yeah, for me, it's always been about handling and/or acceleration. You know, I mean, I always want my stuff to be cool and sound cool and look cool, but really, really much more about the way it feels from the inside. You know, I'll even drive something ugly.
Are you a modifier? Do you take a car and kind of make it your own?
A little bit,
Okay.
a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really working on your question of how I got to where I am, but yeah,
We'll get there.
my 911 is a long story, which I'll probably tell you guys. But I modified that when I owned it the first time. I've owned it twice, and so I do like modified cars, and I'm a little bit unique in like the collector car auction and or specialist world, where there's a lot of people that are really purists and they're into everything being original, and I do like tasteful and careful modifications. I think that there's such an industry behind it. I'm not the only one that feels that way right now.
No, but I understand the purist side of it and the fact like they want a car that it came with it's got the original tires and the original wheels and
certain cars are just too important to modify. I mean, those exist.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go drop and modify a Mura.
Yeah, and we deal with a lot of cars that when they get modified, it makes you gasp a little bit and you think, whoa, what were they doing?
That being said, I'm surprised somebody hasn't done that. Like the crazy
that's a Japan. Seems like
I was going to say
thing.
Japan. I can see somebody in Japan taking a mirror and like wide bodying or doing something.
There are a couple of modified mirrors I've seen.
Are they?
In media. Yeah, and then in like the 80s, people were modifying mirrors, and now they've mostly been switched back.
Yeah.
Oh crap! Yeah. Now what is it worth? Yeah.
That Resto one we saw, it's not modded. It's just redone. It was that green one with the blue interior. You can't forget that one. That one just went up for auction this year. I saw. It was at Bring a Trailer. I think it sold for like $6 million or something.
That
I don't remember what
it takes. A Mira always stands out, especially on the lawn at Concorso. But that car was just that blue interior, green. Yeah, so I agree.
Mirrors are special cars.
That was like the only car that could pull that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you driving now? So 911 still, or you had it twice? Yeah. Tell me the story of that.
Happy to tell the story. I like my 911 story. It usually goes over pretty well. So in 1996, do you remember Brian O'Neill's sports car International on Lake City?
Yes,
right?
I bought an RX-7 from them.
Right, so
it was terrible.
Yeah, so that place. Yeah, so that place has. So I always
great Yelp review, Dan.
I always throw this in there because that place always had a little bit of a sketchy reputation of having stuff that had been wrecked and fixed and all that kind of stuff. They weren't like the highest level car. I was driving by there, and there was a ice green metallic 74 911 on the curb with the total thing with like the price on the windshield and a balloon on the antenna. And I
no inflatable wacky haired guy.
I turned around. Yeah. No, those pre that guy. Yeah. And so I went in there, and it actually belonged to the sales manager's father-in-law, I think was the story, and he bought it new. And it was a beautiful looking car. And so I had to have it, bought it. I had no business at that time financially or anything else owning a vintage 911 as my daily driver, but I bought it and it was done. I owned the car until, and this goes back into what I've done work-wise. I was working in retail basically at that time. I worked at Eddie Bauer and then at the Bon Marché, and then
I know it's a long time ago because most of us call it Macy's.
Well, I turned to Macy's when I was there.
Okay.
You're getting the full
Absolutely.
Fact. But anyway, I got a job eventually working on Porsches and became a Porsche mechanic. I was a professional Porsche mechanic, and I worked for Barrier Motors, and really they're out of business now effectively. So hated Barrier Motors. There was really a time where there was a culture issue in their shop, and that was the time I was there. And I went to work for Chris Powell, Chris's German Auto Service, which is still here in Redmond.
You noticing a trend here? Like he worked for the Bond, and they changed the name, and he left.
Yeah.
He worked for Barrier, then he left, and they changed their name.
Yeah, a lot of influence.
Yeah.
Well, I was lucky enough to get hired on with Vintage Racing Motors, which is where a lot of people around town, if they know me from cars, they know me through that role, and that enabled me to be in the market for a home. And so I sold my 911, and the cool part of the story is that I sold it to a guy up in Snohomish who answered my ad in the Spiel, I think the PCA Spiel, and came to look at it with his wife, and he gave me X amount of dollars for it, and he and his wife were there, and they drove away in their two cars, and my 911 was gone. So I worked for about 12 and a half years for VRM and was a mechanic there, and then became the collection manager. And when I got hired on at Gooding and Company, where I work now, I was able to I had kept in touch with the guy, like you were saying.
Yeah.
You call the guy with your old BMW.
Yeah.
I had kept in touch with this lovely guy who'd owned the car now for over 12 years, and I said, hey, I think I might be able to buy this thing back.
Can I have it back, please?
And he said, and to make a long story short, he said, Hans, I've had all these opportunities over the years to sell the car, but you always kept in touch with me, and I've literally kept it the last 4 or 5 years just so you could have it back.
Oh,
Because he didn't need
story.
the money, and he
Yeah.
kind of enjoyed having it, but he was done with it. He hadn't driven it in a while. And he sold it back to me for the exact same amount he paid 12 years prior. And with even a 74 911,
Yeah.
that was a big deal. I mean, one of the biggest pieces of generosity I've ever experienced, because he said, well, what do you think you could pay? And I said, well, I can't pay a ton, but, this is kind of the range. And he said, let me think about it. And he said, I talked to my wife. We're going to sell it back to you for the same amount. And so he drove it back to VRM and parked it in the same place, he and his wife, and then they left.
That's a really, that's a
That's
great
really
story.
cool.
I mean,
And I just love the story, and the generosity part of it makes me feel really great, but just being able to come full circle. I never wanted to sell the car. We do things that we have to do when we're growing up and getting married and then having kids, and it left my life, and now it's back, hopefully to stay.
Yeah.
And it's a great car that I love, and I don't take it out a ton, time permitting and everything, but it's a part of our family now. So
What have you done to it?
well, when I owned it originally, it of course had an issue, probably because where I bought it, right? But no, it burned an exhaust valve when I was a mechanic, and so it was a really neat thing where there were 3 cars involved: my car and a car at Chris's German Auto with a 2.2 liter that had blown the engine up, and then another guy who had broken the the piston in his Euro 3 liter car, and he bought a 3.2, and so I ended up with this European 3 liter with a broken piston, and so I rebuilt that, and so it's got a European 3 liter in it, and I did cams and ported the heads and things like that. It's not crazy, but it's strong,
nice.
stronger,
Yeah, see.
stronger than a standard 2.7 car by a large stretch.
Yeah.
And then lowered it and did suspension stuff. It's not flared. It's got little wider wheels in the back, but I didn't go crazy. It's got aftermarket seats and steering wheel and stuff. But it's just it made it a little more enjoyable for my use.
did you teach yourself how to work on these cars, or did you go to school for mechanical school? Or
In high school I worked at a German garage for a very short period of time, but in a lot of ways, I'm self-taught. That Baja Bug, I ran it into a stump one time and had to change out the whole front end beam. I blew an oil cooler seal at the top of Snoqualmie Pass, and we removed the engine at that chevron there with a 5-gallon bucket and put a new oil cooler seal.
That does not- I could see that happening at that chevron, yeah.
Crazy stupid. And I always had friends with Volkswagens, which is where that came from. So we were just like, oh, let's take the engine out. And my friend ran into town to get seals and ran back to the top of the pass so we could put a new one in. But yeah, predominantly self-taught and obviously when you get in a professional environment as a mechanic, anyone's just who's not an idiot is learning just right and left.
Yep.
So, professionally taught, self-taught, it's somewhere in the middle. But then when you get at a place like Vintage Racing Motors, the amount of different stuff that we worked on, and for anyone who doesn't know, they house a large private collection, but there's also a lot of customer work there.
Yeah.
And so it's race cars and really, really crazy street cars all the way from the 1900 all the through the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, we've seen some photos that have come privately to us of stuff that goes through VRM is stuff you guys would not really believe is here half the time. They're like, that exists and it's here and it's being worked on here.
Yeah.
That's VRM. It's such a cool place with a lot of good stuff.
I think that's one of the great things. We say it over and over again about the Pacific Northwest is the amount of cars that are here. I mean, you look at it's public knowledge. John Otzbach's collection that just went through.
Here's the most valuable Mustangs in the world, and they were sitting in a warehouse in Issaquah.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the more under the radar. I mean, John was out there as people knew him as a collector, but he definitely had a collection that was pretty under the radar, even for local guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. People would say, "What do you mean he was in Issaquah?"
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always in Issaquah. I never saw a Shelby.
John's a great guy. I remember he showed up in
Such a
that
nice guy.
Shelby one time at Exotics, out of the blue. Not a special day, just this is the first one. Oh, is it? Just the first one? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
The
Okay,
first Shelby.
You can have an end
Ever.
cap.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so awesome. But it's
special
great.
car.
How did you make the move to Gooding? Like, what brought you that way? I mean, it's a great opportunity for sure. But I mean, what made you think, I want to work for Gooding and do auction? That's very different from VRM. I mean, I guess it's not in dealing with people the same way, but different kind of career.
Yeah, so my role at VRM changed from being a mechanic. It was basically, it's the classic, there was a role to fill that didn't seem to be being filled. And so when I moved into being the collection manager, that took me out of the workshop, predominantly at least, and into taking cars in the private collection and doing, really incredible stuff, whether it was media tours or concours or support at incredible vintage race events or whatever, and, did things in Europe. And so that exposed me to people like, David Gooding. And so one of the roles that I played was to, be part of the acquisition and selling of cars in that collection. And so I ended up I've been to pretty much all the Gooding and Company auctions that have ever happened, and for the first few years, obviously in my previous role and now as a specialist. But so I got to know, as a client, I got to know the auction companies. And it was a pretty intriguing thing initially, just thinking about it from a career standpoint. I always felt that I was likely going to need a next step. I didn't think that my collection manager job was going to take me to retirement, right? So I needed something more. And once I got to know David and did a little business, with them and saw how they operate and made some friends inside the organization and saw what a top-notch and just very, I don't want to say careful. Gooding and Company just does things the right way, and they always have, and it comes from the top. And so I could feel that and see that just as a client. And so it became a really, really natural fit for me once I got to know them personally. And so, ended up speaking with David over the course of quite a long period of time about the potential of doing something before we actually pulled the trigger.
Cool. I think you had mentioned it earlier, but everybody sees these auctions. They see them on TV. They see them there in Monterey, and they think there's thousands of people behind the scenes. But there's a lot of these auctions and like Concorso and things like that. It's a small group of people. There's volunteers and things of the day. But like you were saying, how many people are on your team? Yeah,
our full-time team is roughly 20, and that fluctuates up and down, obviously. But we swell. Well, it's great. And when I say we swell, it's not just like, hey, I know a guy who knows how to do this. Sure. We have an extended team of professionals.
People show up when they're needed,
and work our auction events with us. Yeah, so everybody from our on-site production team, who is just like amazing, and our security team and our caterers, everybody who comes and works at our client services desks as greeters and things like that are absolutely top notch. And they have years and years and years of experience of coming to the Gooding and Company auctions and working with us. So there's not a lot of turnover in those positions because people really enjoy it, and that has enabled them to get to know our clientele. And so it's a very uniform, year after year, uniform kind of group of people that you experience at Gooding and Company, which is great. And that's above and beyond our core group of 20.
I was going to ask, like us, we see so many cars come through. I'm just looking at it at Drivers Club and like this 962 staring at me and things like that.
Don't look at it.
Yeah, like it's so pretty.
Yeah.
But they in a strange way become normal. Seeing things like this come through are still exciting and stuff like that, but it becomes normal when it's a big part of your life. Is there a car that has jumped across the block, or one that you come across with that just kind of blew your mind or really kind of made you stop for a second?
We get renewed enthusiasm all the time.
Yeah.
And most of it comes from at least for me personally, from cars that we pull out of garages that just haven't been seen forever. And then there's instances where we get to have in our possession and hopefully transact a car that you've had as on your own list of dream cars, And one of those would be like the 312 T2 that we sold last year at Pebble Beach. And for me, that was just an absolute bucket list car, even to experience, let alone to be able to consign and then find a new buyer for. So, but garage finds and barn finds, as popular as they have been, in this general vernacular in the collector car industry, for me personally, are, what really, really get me ramped up, because it's just stuff that's been sealed away. So yeah, there's certain examples of even a little more pedestrian. When I say pedestrian, like a pedestrian Ferrari. In our online sale that we have coming up that starts next week, we've got this amazing 275 GCB that's a 6 carburetor car with a torque tube, which is the best specification, and it was factory fitted with an outside like racing filler cap on the rear quarter panel. And that's a car that's been in the same ownership forever. It's super original. And we've done lots of 275s, but when you get that 275, it's super exciting. That's what really, really gets us energized, is to be able to get the highest quality or things that are off the radar. You know?
There are unique cars among unique cars. I want to go back to something you were talking about, barn finds. And we've talked about this with our previous guests. You think that's going to continue to be a thing? I feel like there's so many people out there on the road looking for the barn finds and looking for the, the Chargers that are hidden away in the farmer's barn, or the farmer back in 1960 who bought a Ferrari or traded it for a tractor and he put it in the back. I'm seeing less and less. I mean, you had the old days of Speed TV, and Wade and Carini would always be in Connecticut digging some Packard out of the back of a garage. I hear those stories less and less these days. Are you still seeing that happening?
We are, and I guess there's probably a little bit of a fall off, but I do seeing it continue. I think that it's probably going to follow some demographic lines with things like baby boomers dying off. There's going to be more and more, because there's still lots of stuff in garages. It's been incredible, even things like 356 Speedsters we've in Southern California. I mean, we must have sold 4 or 5 now that were at least first or second owner and had just been locked away forever and ever. And we do see a lot of it. We also have a lot of them come across our desk that don't end up in our auctions. So there's still a lot out there. There really is. And I do think the enthusiasm is going to continue for them, because it's an incredibly romantic proposition. Everybody who's a car guy cranes your head out of your window when you drive by any open garage, and it doesn't even matter what you see. Oh, that guy's got an old pickup truck in there, right? Oh, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
There's just something about the romance of finding an old car in a garage or a barn that is never going to go away. And so I do think there's still some gems out there. I think we'll see more.
Or we need to start putting stuff in garages and leaving
it. I hope so. The most wonderful thing about garage find cars when they come to auction is that it allows you, if it hasn't been messed with early on, but really original cars that have just been locked away, is it allows the potential buyer to see something that hasn't been messed with, and it hasn't been there. There's only the original version of it for them to contend with mentally.
Preserved
there's
history.
There's not another 4 layers of paint and a bunch of Bondo and some fender flares that don't belong there for you to work around, right? And so people have asked us, over and over, why is there so much money being spent on these cars that are all dirty and original? And you say, because you don't have to get past that. You're seeing the original article, no matter what its condition, really.
I love it when auction companies do that. When they pull a car out of a garage or a barn and they don't touch it. Like it's sitting there with, the rat's nest or whatever it is, and they sell it that way because, like you're saying, you're viewing history. I mean, the last time that car saw light was when whoever pushed it into the garage for whatever ungodly reason. So
yeah, and even if you want to restore it, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we love it when very original cars are obviously left alone. But even if you want to restore a car, that's a great restoration candidate.
Yeah.
Something that you can see everything you're getting. All the warts are right in front of you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, it goes back to your Porsche story. It's the stories. It's the fact, you're talking to the little old lady who had the Porsche Speedster, who bought it, when her husband died and she didn't drive it, and then, or she drove it every day and then put it away 3 years ago when she lost her license, and it's always good stuff. So yeah.
There's one of my favorite photos. It's actually strangely I had it bookmarked because I was looking at it last week. Jeremy Cliff Photo, I think is the site. Yeah, jeremycliff.com, and it's a Mura orange barn find. And they did like an actual photo shoot where they found it like in a woodshed with its tires on the side, like they had been taken off the car. And instead of like cleaning it all up, they literally just put the tires on it and put it into a dark like warehouse and did all the lighting. And it's just exactly as they pulled it out of the garage. It's a beautiful photo set. But yeah, it's like you guys can kind of see it here real quick.
I mean, yeah, that's the...
Yeah, like artfully lit with all the dust on it.
Yeah, it's just perfect. I know, I love it.
Yeah, it's romantic, right? And you wouldn't drive it like that, and you're eventually going to clean it off and wash it. But it's great just to see it, and yeah, I mean, there's something about having the opportunity, especially to purchase something like that in its state, and that's why we don't clean them. And people say, oh, there's money in that dirt and all that, and that's maybe there is, but really you just want people to say, this is what we found, this is what was found.
It's a visual story. Seeing the dust helps,
and you react to it however it is you want, and bid accordingly, right?
Yeah. If you want to bid more, you can. I mean, exactly. Please.
Have you ever had the? I guess, is it a conflict of interest if you find a car? Can you bid on it as an employee? I mean, not one you've consigned, but if you have you ever seen a car come across and you're like, do I ask for forgiveness when I get it home?
Yeah. There's certainly times where you'll fall in love with something when you get to the auction site and you say, well, I wonder if that went for this, right? If I could get it, because I mean, very clearly most of the stuff we sell is out of my personal price range. But yeah, there are times I've never put my hand up in a sale. I don't think any of my colleagues have. I think we'd probably have to prearrange something like that. But yeah, you certainly have. I mean, we fall in love with cars in the auctions every single time we get there, and they all show up in one place. And that's one of the interesting things about our business is that we work so hard and we travel and we visit all these people and see all these cars. And then there's this week where they all come to the same place, and we get to experience them just like you guys coming in as spectators or buyers. Or it's really, really great to be able to see it all come together like that.
There was a red 355 6-speed that came across the block. We were at an auction in California. Both Nick and I looked at each other like, Yeah. And right now, I can tell you, I am genuinely kicking myself. It would have been a stretch at the time. It would have been a really smart investment, though.
Yeah.
Because it sold for like 85, I think. Yeah. But 355 6-speed, I mean, terrible motor, terrible car to drive, honestly. But the fact that it's such a collector's item, and it's a Ferrari. A Ferrari on the low just goes skyrocket later. They all do if they're manuals.
355 with a manual gearbox.
And they sound so good.
That's a great car to have money in right now, I think. And I like the way they drive. They sound fantastic, especially coupe. I have a very good friend who just bought a silver with a red interior, one owner, 6-speed 355, and it's just absolutely drop dead gorgeous. I mean, lipstick red and leather on everything.
Interesting.
It's just the thing is just really cool.
See it.
Sounds obnoxiously cool.
Yeah. Obnoxiously
cool. Like that blue interior on that Mira. It's just like that.
Well, he's French too. Right?
Yeah.
So,
you should have led with that.
Yeah. He's in France, so he gets to drive red interior cars.
Yeah. No, I mean they're terrible to drive, and that they don't drive well. It's just owning one is awful because they're just so expensive to own.
Yeah. I mean, any modern Ferrari is gonna take your money at some point.
The 458 and newer is pretty good, but man, those earlier ones were just a lot of throw the money in. Service costs are going to kill
buttons, all that kind of stuff.
I don't think the new ones aren't motor out as much, are they?
No, almost none.
That's what I mean, it's where you have to take this interior out just to get to the pulleys.
The belts. Yeah.
Belts.
No, there's a lot going on with that stuff.
It's interesting. So I mean. Yeah. What do you see as the next? We've watched muscle cars go through the roof. We've watched. And fall. I'm okay with that. I still want my '69 Charger.
Me too.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I'd take a Superbird too if it fell out of a barn. So. I mean, what do you think is going to be the next thing? I mean, we've all had the opportunity of being in Monterey and seeing obviously the classic Italians. I feel like they're always going to be consistently on the up. I don't think you're ever going to see like, oh boy, I picked up a Mira for, under $1 million. I mean, I remember when the Countachs nobody wanted those.
Yeah,
and then
75, 80 grand for a Countach at a time.
Yeah.
Then some PA ran one into a movie, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted one from Wolf of Wall Street or whatever. But yeah.
Well, there's certainly cars on the upper level that are always going to be total blue chip investments if you want to think about them as investments. And I don't always like to think about them like investments, but when you think of the next big thing that'll be popular, I think we're already seeing things like rally cars. I still think that there's competition cars of a newer ilk in the 90s and 2000s that are going to remain really, really exciting and popular with people. It's always about what was on your bedroom wall, as they say, right? Mm-hmm. So the blue chip stuff is going to remain strong. I still think that kind of 60s and 70s, mid-level, small Italian Alfa Romeos, Lancias, things like that. They're so easy to own, easy to use, and they perform well, and you can do unbelievable events with them. I mean, you really, really can. Depending on what you buy, you can go to do events worldwide if you want with a car that's, $50,000 to $100,000. And so that stuff's going to remain strong. And then there's just stuff like F40s and Carrera GTs that is kind of a mainstay of collector car in that price range, and those I think are always going to remain incredibly popular.
F40s went up in price this week. Somebody crashed one in Australia. So
right, the rarer car now.
It was on a test drive too.
Oh, it
wasn't even the owner. It was a guy test drive it. I wonder how that went over. I really do.
Somebody crashed the McLaren Senna LM.
The orange one.
Yeah, the orange one. So he was a professional race car driver, but
yeah,
I'm starting to see a lot more people. Maybe I'm just starting to see it like of these like the Niki Lauda cars and things like that. The people are personally buying the F1 cars and they're driving them. They're taking these events. There seems to be more events that are coming out of people doing that, which I think is really cool because we're getting to see cars that we didn't get to see race. I mean, if you weren't there in person, that are actually getting to be out there. I mean,
they sound so much better.
When Richard Greer was here, we were talking about his Ferrari.
That's always surprised me. The older F1 cars always look like They look like go-karts. They're so small now.
Yeah.
Cars are so large now. They were so small then. It was just like, man.
Yeah, well, his 312, it was just a tiny little jewel of a thing. I mean, you stand next to it, and you're like, there's nothing there. It's incredible.
That's why I'm thinking of it, because we were listening to your interview with Adam Carolla, and you were talking about Nicky Lauder's car and how small it was.
That was just before. It was just before Pebble last year. Yeah.
But it's interesting those cars, and I'm glad to see that they're one that the companies are releasing them or they're coming out of private sitting and things like that. But it's always interesting to see, because watching TV you don't quite understand what the car is.
Well, the events that should be on everybody's bucket list are, and they may seem unattainable, but you can do it, are things like the Monaco Historic Classic and Le Mans Classic and things like that, because just as you're saying, you get to see these things, and we're not always going to have that opportunity. No. It's already dwindling a little bit how much risk people are willing to put their equipment under to do these events, but it changes your entire perspective to see them run and go on a track, even if they're not going quite as fast as they did in period, and there's no Nicky Lauda in the driver's seat. Those events are just transcendent, and as an enthusiast, even if you're not really into racing, it's absolute heaven to have things like that just operating at full chat near you. It's really, really special. So,
is there anything on your list you haven't done that you want to go? What's on your bucket list?
The Mille Miglia is on my bucket list.
Yeah.
No,
that would be fun.
I've never made it there, and I think that would be incredible. And I know a number of people have done it, and all rave about it. It's apparently pretty arduous and a little stressful, but it's the type of thing that I think I'd love to do once. But road rallies, like I said, driving for me is where it's at, and road rallies are my favorite type of event.
Have you done a bunch of the ones here? I mean, have you done any of the rallies around here?
I have not done a lot of local stuff. I have to say, it's a little bit weird. My local car scene is kind of me and a few friends, and they go on drives and things like that. And that may have something to do with doing it professionally and spending all my professional hours doing cars and talking to other people about cars. But no, I haven't. I know there's been lots of great rallies, and I know lots of people that have done them and that just love them. So it's certainly on my list of things to do, is to get a little more involved around here.
There's some really good ones in Canada, and we run our, of course, CMOT, but there's...
He doesn't want to talk about Canada, Dan. Move on.
No, I love Canada. I didn't, I had to come back. It wasn't by choice.
Exactly.
No,
man.
The rallies in Canada in particular, I've heard wonderful things about.
They're so scenic. You can't go as fast in Canada. They'll pull your car. We've talked about that before. 30 kilometers over, and they take your car up there. But it allows for a different type of rally. Like I said, it's so beautiful up there. And the roads, though, like they don't have interconnecting roads like we do. You can't go 1,000 different ways to the same city up there. It's like you have this one highway. That's it, because that's the only one we made, unless you have an off-road vehicle. But it's just so pretty up there. I'd recommend anybody do a rally up there when we can get back up there, that is.
Yeah, when we're so blessed, right?
Yeah. What's in your stable now for cars? You've got the 911 you've mentioned.
I've got the 74 911. I just this last year bought a 74 Alpha GTV.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yep, which I absolutely love. I've had a few of those, and this is the best one I've had, which is great. And then I have a 77 Ford pickup truck.
It's hard to be a mid-70s Ford.
Which kind of after I was going to say that another answer to your question about what's kind of hot and everything. Obviously, pickup trucks and four-wheel drive vehicles have become, and there's a lot of that has to do with affordability. I mean, if you only want to spend $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, you're really running out of really interesting stuff that you can buy at least a nice example of, it seems, these days. I mean, unfortunately, 911s just keep going up in value. Well, they've dipped, but it gets hard for people. So it's I think a real natural progression for things like my Ford pickup truck to become popular, because they give you so much pleasure. They really do.
If it's rainy, you can literally climb into the engine compartment, close the hood, and work on it. I'm wondering if we're going to see a big bump in the vintage Broncos now that the new Broncos.
Well, there's already been a big bump in them.
But I'm saying I'm wondering if it's going to be even bigger. If we're really going to see, because a lot of those Broncos have been taken to Southern California. They've been modified, and they're not there. But like the original Broncos, like where you got the original suspension, like we were talking about originality.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with it. Have you seen Jay Leno's latest one that they put that?
Yes.
Oh God, they put the engine from they put
a
the
GT500
in it,
engine with a manual.
But you look
cool.
The car was a joke, and Craig Ferguson gave it to him as a joke, and they restored it. But I mean, you look at it from the outside, you really can't tell. I mean, you can tell by the suspension, but it's got that classic look of a Bronco. So
yeah, I have a coworker who's doing a Bronco resto mod. He's got a Coyote 5.0 swap going into it. There's a guy or company, out of Vancouver, BC, actually, who specializes in resto mod Broncos, and they'll do 2-spec aluminum frame, everything. Really cool stuff.
I mean, the Bronco. If I had a Bronco, I mean, I've been looking. I've been seriously going on the Ford website and specking and doing that all the time. I don't need a car right now, but original Bronco. Don't start. But like original Bronco, I think that would be a really fun car to drive.
Yeah, and they're so hard to find. I mean, if you want to look for something hot right now, go look for a barn find, rust-free, uncut Bronco.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck.
It's never been run into a rock.
They were they were such robust vehicles. They were just driven into the ground, and then of course all of them had the fender flares cut off of them in the rear because you couldn't put a big tire on it, and they've been lifted and all this kind of craziness. So they're great vehicles. Though I would love to have one.
I like the mid-70s stuff like that. I think it'd be fun to kind of see some of the older Ford trucks. Like I had a 71 Ford truck, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, as redneck as it is, I traded a gun for that truck. Like I gave him a gun, he gave me a truck. And I think the truck ran a lot better. It was legal. Like we didn't. Okay.
I'm just saying different time that you could still do that. It was a great truck.
Like I mean, it ran when I wanted to run, and I mean, it broke down one time and it was raining, and I climbed on the engine, closed the hood almost, and worked on the truck.
Yeah.
It's like it's a great time.
And my truck is really interesting because it was original owner. And so I found it on Craigslist, on my iPad one night, and I called the first thing the next morning. It was being sold by his son, but he was still alive. He was 100 years old, and he bought it new.
Wow.
And he was a Boeing engineer, and he bought a new truck and a new travel trailer on like the same week right when he retired in 1977. And all of the paperwork, everything, his brochures, the salesperson's card, and like 2-inch file of receipts came with this truck. And unfortunately, the guy passed on 5 days after I bought it, and I had to meet the son again to clarify some paperwork, something for the DMV. And he said, my dad passed away yesterday.
You took that guy's truck and he died.
Isn't this so? But he said, and I hate to be morbid. Yeah. No, but he said, I told him that I sold his truck to a really great guy who was really going to love it and everything.
That's awesome.
And it was just like completely original. Has all these gauges, like old man gauges and everything.
Yeah, what do they call that? The suicide knob on the wheel.
Suicide knob.
Great.
Yeah, had a camper on the back.
I love it when you get a car you'll see them at auction and they've got the book. You can always tell the books and it original window sheet, and you look at it and you go, God, they paid what for that? And
yeah. Well, when it comes to advice that we give people a lot, and we try to operate as a resource for not only our clients but other people we meet in the who are maybe new to the collector car hobby, is documenting what you have. If you can think about it like money in the bank. I mean, it also accentuates your own ownership experience. But it really, really helps when it's time to move a car on to have at least something. I mean, have some magazine clippings, at least save your service receipts, but put things in order, and document your time with a car because it's really important to the next owner.
And that's not just for auction cars. I mean, in general, doing that.
Any car is an auction car eventually. I mean, it doesn't matter if you've got a new car. I mean, just don't be someone who's just like discarding things. Like that, it really, really pays off. And obviously, when we get a car, and that blue 750 Monza is a great example, that we were talking about on the cover of this catalog. I mean, it's a car that had been owned, by the guy for, it was over 50 years. And it had everything from his entire ownership experience in that file.
Jay Leno had him on with that car.
Yeah.
And it was a great story. I mean, I don't remember the whole thing, but it was a really great story behind that car and why it was that color and what. Yeah. So
Admiral Phillips was his name. Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful guy. And just one of the words that comes up a lot with us was stewardship and really taking care of a car and being a great steward of it and its story and its history and treating it right and everything like that. And holding on to that kind of documentation is just part and parcel to that.
Yeah, we don't own cars. We're just caretakers. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Let's take our next break and we'll come back. We'll talk a little more about some stories and Avants. We'll be right back.
Grandpa, what do you call this thing again?
It's a 66 Ford Bronco.
I think you got ripped off.
Why is that, honey?
It's got no Wi-Fi, no USB port, no Bluetooth.
Exactly. I guess we'll just have to talk.
Sometimes the best way to connect is to disconnect.
Is that the window button?
It's called a window crank.
Cool. The faster I move it, the faster it goes down.
This moment of escape was created by Haggerty.
Being old is kind of cool, Grandpa.
Works for me.
For people who love cars.
And we're back. So we didn't go to Monterey this year, obviously, because there was no Monterey this year.
Well, technically it wouldn't have happened yet, but yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for making me sad, Dan.
We're going to Wyoming and playing in boats.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Anyway.
Wyoming's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love Jackson Hole. So
If we get to Jackson, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what are you guys doing? Are you guys doing the online stuff? How's that working out for auctions now? Are you guys just going fully online to compensate? I mean,
Yeah, the online space is something that's from a sales standpoint that we wanted to do, regardless of the pandemic. So those were plans that we kind of had in place. The postponement of of auctions this year has I think forced everybody's hand a little bit, and so it's moved up our plans and focused us on the online space. So we've developed a platform, and our first sale today's the 27th. It went live this morning. The catalog did online, and bidding starts August 3rd and will run through August 8th. So we've got, I think it's roughly 55 cars and 75 total lots, including 20 lots of really cool automobilia. And so we're really excited about it. It really is going to enable Getting a Company to better serve our clients, whether it be in flexibility in terms from a commission standpoint to being able to offer automobilia and things like that. It's really a great thing to have, in our toolbox.
well, let's walk through that real quick because I'm curious.
How does it work?
Yeah, because
That's
I'm about to put my Porsche up for sale. In case listeners want my Turbo S, it's going to go for sale here. Well, anytime someone wants to buy it, because I'm going to go buy an R8. But say, how would I do that? Like if I just said, hey, I'm going to go auction my car, like what process do I go through?
Submitting cars to us is really easy. You just find me or any of my colleagues at goodingco.com, and you'd submit your car through an online form or directly to us through email. We review submissions as a group, and we basically will get back to you with, number one, whether we think we can help you, whether it's a car we think is appropriate for our sales, and if so, we'll talk to you about a proposal and proposed terms and which auction we can put it in, whether it's an online auction or a live auction. And it's important to point out that we're not going to get out of the live auction space. The same 3 auctions that we've always done are still scheduled as soon as we can have them. In addition to our Passion of a Lifetime London sale, which we had to postpone, and it hopefully will happen by the end of the year. But yeah, submitting cars for our consideration, I guess, is a really easy task. We get back to every single submission, and happy to have a conversation with anybody about any car at any time.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was like a people didn't just go put their car up for auction. I never really understood how that worked, so that's good to know.
So, I mean, with an online auction, and excuse these terms I'm using, but everybody thinks of like eBay and stuff like that. Is it going to be a live auction so you can view the car online, you can get all the specs, and then at a certain time you're auctioning it off online, or is it a continual bid thing until the end? How's it work?
Yeah, it'll be a continual bid thing until the end. So it starts on the 3rd and then ends. I think that the lots start ending at noon Pacific on the 8th, which is, I believe, is Saturday. And so yeah, we'll have it'll be familiar to people that are familiar with online auctions. There'll be bid increments you can choose from, or you can manually enter a max bid. The online descriptions are very robust with even more photos because we're working in the virtual world now. So we've got great, robust, photo arrays. We've got all of the background files for the car scanned and available for registered bidders to view. And yeah, it'll go over a period of time. And then we have an anti-sniping feature like you've seen in other places at the end of the sale. So
cool.
It'll continue on until, last man standing, I guess.
That's really cool.
But we're really excited. We've got a great lineup of cars. I mean, there's some really great stuff. I mentioned earlier a Ferrari 275 GTB. We've got an F40, F50, and an Enzo, all from one owner.
Wow.
2 of which are one-owner cars. The F40 only has 4,700 miles, I think, and it's one owner, and it's a U.S. spec 92 with original paint. I mean, really just top-level stuff. And then even down into the lower-level cars, price-wise, there's a lot of quality. We've got motorcycles and stuff, and then our automobilia stuff is just really, really cool. GTO seats for our GTO seats.
Well,
that's cool.
That's really cool.
I mean, just really, really neat.
Things you didn't know you needed.
A perpetual calendar that used to be for like Ferrari dealerships in the 60s and 70s, and
I love that stuff. I love the old memorabilia. There's a guy auctioning off a pre-energy efficient Porsche sign. So Porsche made a big switch in all the dealerships to go LED for their signs for energy efficiency. And he's auctioning off an original Porsche, like it sign like you'd have on the outside of a dealer, so it's like 15 feet long.
Yeah.
Or maybe more than
Something
that.
your
It's
neighbors
huge.
would really love you for.
Oh, man, if I had a giant garage and I was a Porsche guy.
Oh, yeah.
And
like,
your significant other as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
I sent it to Doug.
I
I
got
was
a
like, you should put it up in
sunburn in the
Driver's
garage.
Club. I was like, put it up in Driver's Club. That'd be awesome to have on a wall.
It would
So
look
many
good in here.
Yeah, it would look awesome in here,
Yeah.
right? And it's I think he wants like 13,000 or something for it. But I mean, specialized signs like that. I mean,
Find another one, right?
yeah, exactly. Find another one. He's the only one. He's a sign collector, so the guy knows what he's got. But it was pretty cool to see stuff like that, and I love seeing that stuff at auctions. I have seen that stuff go before. Like I mentioned, if I was a Ferrari collector and I was at that level of wealth, a pair of GTO seats that I have in my office, yeah, I would totally do that. That'd be so cool.
Totally.
The classic neon stuff. Like you and I've talked about like the mobile gas stuff and the gas pumps. I love that stuff.
Where were we at? There was a Shell station. Oh, we're on Front Street in Issaquah, and there's an old Shell station. I'm like, we need to come here and just take a photo. This is really cool. We need to drive the Triumph here.
Well, there's that, and there's in Ellensburg. There's that mobile. Place.
Oh, is there? Oh, I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah.
Carl actually told us about it. Apparently it's a full-on vintage mobile gas station, but it's in a diner or something.
Carl
like
would
that.
know.
Yeah,
Carl
would
knows
know.
all the good places.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That sounds great. No, adding we haven't been able to sell much automobilia in our live auctions. The auctions can only be so long, and the lot spaces are relatively valuable, and so we haven't really delved into it too heavily. But we're really excited about doing it. We've always been really excited about it. It's something that we all dabble in ourselves as specialists, and David Gooding has got his own stuff. And so once we put the word out to a few people that we were going to be able to do that for this first online sale, people were like, "How about this incredible thing?"
Yeah.
And
Sure,
so
we'll think about it.
no, and I think people are really going to appreciate the opportunity to look at something like that on our site and not just cars. I think it's a great thing.
No, I think you'll have collectors that'll love that stuff. If I was had the money, I'd have a lot more of it.
Now I know I'm
sure.
not going to bed till 2:00 tonight because I'm gonna be on there. Ooh, I want that. No. I want that. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have more of those sales coming up. It's not
Cool.
we're not just filling a hole that's left by the pandemic. It's definitely something that's a long-term plan. Always has been for us, and so we're really looking forward to extending it out and having it be sistered in with our live sales.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You are an Avants member. I've seen you on there, right?
I'm an Avants member.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's easy to remember your name, so it's like, I know I've seen you on the Avants page. Have you done any track time?
I have not been at a track day for some time. When was my last track day? I think it was probably like 2007. I used to drive my 911 on the track when I owned it first time. And then I had a WRX that I did a little track stuff with. And I think the last time was like 2007. Yeah. So no, that's another thing that I'd really love to get back into. I've always been a huge fan.
Well, your timing is perfect because there's a track day at the Ridge from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. with Avants.
Oh, wow. When is that?
Saturday the 1st is our next Avants event, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Nick and I, of course, will be out of town. But, it's HPDE. So fully coached. Super important. It's not a lapping day, but this is a great time. It's like I said, it's the best investment you'll ever make in your car for modifications. It's a track day and some instruction. And it's the most fun you'll ever have in your car.
Avants is a great network, and that sounds great. And being coached is key, really.
Yeah, we've had a lot of coaches on the show.
Yeah,
good guys.
Yeah, definitely. I was lucky enough to go through Dirtfish and get a little rally instruction, which was so fun. Had Mirko.
Those guys are so great out there.
Yeah.
So much fun. I can't believe how
Again,
much fun that was. I knew it was going to be fun.
Yeah.
But that's one of those experiences where you're like, okay, that was worth it.
You mean I don't have to do this in a snowy parking lot in a high school?
Right. And I get to do it in someone else's car.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I break it, you fix it. I
Oh,
like
no.
this deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A lot of sideways out there. Yeah.
We've all done that, especially in Subaru. All Subaru guys, snowy parking lot, high school. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the only thing we've got coming up right away with Avants, but there's a ton of stuff that's in the works. Some I'm super excited about that we can't talk about yet, but I can't wait to make that announcement on the show. But they have a bunch of drives that are details to be announced in September. I think there's definitely going to be great with Avants. The last drive they did around Mercer Island and stuff, it was like almost 200 cars.
I see more cars driving around with Avants license.
I know, I love it.
It's so funny.
I
Like,
see them all the time.
and I feel so stupid half the time where I'm like waving at somebody. Like, I was driving home in the Triumph one day and a guy drove by me and I don't know. It was like it was a wagon. He had an Avants thing. I sped up to him and I had my Avants sweatshirt on and I must have looked like an idiot. I was like. And he's like, it wasn't connecting. Like, it's like, go away, little man.
Pointing at your chest.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a funny story. I don't know if it's it's not from, I don't know if it's, I know him through Avants. He's an Avants member. I have no idea who it is. He's in a blue Subaru STI, really nice, clean one. we were at a stoplight here on my way in here, stopped next to me, and he rolled on his window. He's like, "Hey, Dan." And I was like,
Hi.
I have no idea who this is. And he said, "Listen to your show." And I was like, "Oh, thank God.
Thank God.
Fame.
Hey, are you Dan? I'm serving you.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Throws the papers.
Yeah. Congratulations, you're a father. Yeah. Pretty much.
Don't joke about that. Worst nightmare.
Kids are beautiful if they're somebody else's.
Yeah, but Avants has really grown. Adam does such a great job. He's such a nice guy, and that he's just it's growing and growing and growing. I mean, even if you just look at it from a benefits standpoint with their discounts and stuff, it's incredible. It's an incredible deal. And then the network, even just on social media, is really, really helpful. It's
There's
wonderful.
nothing you can't
it's
get answered now.
fantastic.
Like,
it was great.
It has grown to the point where there's not a single thing you can't have answered. Like somebody will know something,
And it somehow becomes kind of almost your go-to. I wonder what those guys think.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It is my go-to. I like that it's really, the vibe is very self-policed. Like if somebody says something rude, somebody will say back without being a jerk, "Hey, dude, don't say stuff like that." Like it's immediately like the community does not support being rude. I really, really appreciate that because people who ask questions that may seem dumb to some people are not dumb questions. We emphasize that to death on the show. Like somebody says, somebody's brand new to cars and they're new to Avants, it's perfect because they can say, "Hey, I don't know what tires I should get." And we're like, here you go.
Yeah.
That's not a stupid question.
Well, that's one of the things with Gooding & Company that we try to make sure that our clients understand is that we're here, like I mentioned earlier, as like a resource. I mean, we don't know everything, but we certainly have been through a lot of different cars and through a lot of different kind of ownership scenarios, and we know what works and what doesn't in a lot of ways. And we invite people to contact us and ask us, and it's nice to have second opinions, third opinions. Maybe someone has a different perspective, another set of eyes, as they say, right? Yeah.
So many times I've thought I knew exactly what the answer was, and you go to Avants or you go to a website or something like that, and it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that, and that is right. So.
Yeah, no, it's true.
If our listeners do want to get a hold of you, say somebody wants to look at auction stuff or has more questions, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, our website is www.goodingco.com. Goodingco.com. And then I'm on social media. You could grab me there. My contact details are on the website as well.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm an open resource for anybody who wants to give me a jingle. I'd love to talk to anybody. And our sales are open to the public. We have an entry fee if you want to come to one of our live sales. It's a great time. We get the world's greatest auctioneer. Anybody who's been to them basically tells us that they have a wonderful time, whether they're interested in looking at buying a car or not.
Yeah, you don't have to have any interest in buying a car to have a good time at an auction. It's actually tons of fun just to go. You don't have to have any interest in buying anything to have it be worth your while. I highly recommend everybody go to the auctions.
It really is.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's a fun vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But make sure you keep your hands in your pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah. No waving at the free popcorn.
Yeah, no.
I'm over here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, I
Do not do that.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I've seen it happen where they're like, that one doesn't count.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm poor. I take that back. Okay, good. Moving on. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming in and sharing, taking time, and obviously you're busy right now, and I wish you guys nothing but the best with the online auction. I look forward to the in-person auctions again and the automobilia stuff. That's going to be great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to be on. Yeah,
right.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks again, Hans.
All right, for this episode of Rain City Supercars, I'm Nick.
I'm Dan, and don't just get there. Enjoy the drive.